This is Believe in Buckeyes. I'm Brian Brown, an All-American cornerback, Chimdi Chekwa. This show is brought to you guys by FanDuel. Chill, what's going on, man? We're starting the Big Ten. We're going into the conference. We're starting it on the road. How you doing? Coming off a bye week. Did you watch any ball this weekend, man? Did you sleep in? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, bye week, so I got a chance to watch a little bit of everybody. Florida, Miami, Indiana, Illinois, and a few other games here and there. Wisconsin. Wisconsin. Yeah, got a little bit of everybody, but I'm excited for Ohio State being able to start Big Ten play, big game on the road. It could potentially be a very exciting game, especially with two really good offenses.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, so obviously Ohio State were traveling west, traveling to the Northwest to play the Washington Huskies. Washington is 3-0 on the season. Man, they're scoring some points. They averaging 61 points a game so far. Obviously, no, this is their first Big Ten matchup. Couple of layups in those win totals, but I mean, 61 points and starting off the season that high is still very impressive, right? I mean, no matter who your competition is.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, if you watch Washington play, their quarterback is an explosive player. I know Coach Patricia says he kind of reminds them of Kyler Murray. And we saw what Kyler Murray did in college, right? So that's high praise. You're talking about a kid who I think originally went to Arizona. Arizona's head coach goes to Washington. He, follows him to Washington. 4-star type QB out of Arizona area. Yeah, I mean, just a talented player. So they got some guys on their offense that can really get it done. Obviously, very confident in our defensive ability. But the Big Ten, I mean, across the Big Ten, this year, some quarterbacks that are really showing how impressive and how explosive they can be. I think this is another one really to start off big play for Ohio State.
Yep, and that quarterback is Demond Williams, the quarterback, dual threat quarterback. And even before the season, when people start talking about Big Ten play and what is Washington Huskies going to bring to the table, they say, hey, their big three is as good as any big three in college football. When you start talking about their quarterback and Williams, running back, and Jonah Coleman, and then their preseason all Big Ten wide receiver in Denzel Boston. Three guys that, like I said, they're top tier guys. We definitely going to see these guys on Sundays as well. Is the running back Coleman is arguably some people, the prospect is one of the top running backs in the nation when you start looking at things like that. So far in the year, obviously, like I said, it's 61 points. He's killing nothing. He's averaging like 7 yards a carry at this point. Boston is averaging over, I think, 13, 14 yards a catch. Just had another big week against in the Apple Cup against Washington State. So, I mean, we're looking at it's obviously it's a test with the Big Ten, but first road game. And also, so that leads to, in my opinion, to be a pretty big test for our defense to be able to kind of come in and try to lock down those three.
Yeah, first road game. So I go back to, what year was that? Was that 2008? Maybe?
When we played them, I think that was year 2 in college football. For that was probably like 07 season, 08 season we traveled out there.
Yeah, so 07. So that was my redshirt freshman year. We traveled out to Washington. I think that was our first game on the road, if I remember correctly as well. And I just remember how loud it was in that stadium.
Oh, yeah.
So I know we think about some of the toughest places to play, some of the loudest places to play. And people would ask me, like, where have you played that was some of the loudest places you played? Washington is on the list. Yeah. The way they got their stadium is configured, keeps some of that sound in there. And yeah, I mean, we went out there on the road, we were able to take care of business. But it definitely was an electrifying atmosphere. And a kind of a similar situation. Dynamic quarterback in Jake Locker was a first-round draft pick. Really good receiver in Marcel Reese, who I played with in Oakland, who shifted to fullback in the NFL. Really good running back in Lewis Rankin. So, this is a similar type situation. And I just remember from our experience, really having to be prepared. Tress got us ready, prepared to go out there on the road in a hostile environment, take care of business. It's a business trip for these guys. The most important thing for Ohio State is to be able to contain that offense and that talent. What's the spread looking like?
Yeah, so FanDuel. So that's interesting. That's a good question because so FanDuel has us at 8.5 right now. And I'm not. So it's the start of the week. Let's say 3 or 4
Yeah.
days ago before Washington played in the Apple Cup, the spread was at like 13.5. So
What
like
changed?
is what
What
changed?
changed?
A good win. I don't know. I don't know exactly how how that stuff kind of put together. But
Yeah.
the over under on this right now is 52.5. FanDuel has it right there. And like I said, we're looking at a team that had they already averaged over that amount. You saw talking about over unders and them averaging 61 points a game. So you add Ohio State offense in the mix there with Julian Sayin and all our weapons and Jeremiah Smith. You think, I don't know, I'm not a gambling guy, but you think, we might end up in that over range. But, you talk about the noise, and I recall that as well. Like you said, that was our first road trip. We got there a little early. We went to the fish market, just throwing the fish to the guys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Before school starts, so we could get there a little early. I recall that. But like you said, the sound is something it's tough to explain. Ohio State, our fans travel with us. I remember us having a couple of red sections in our stadium because
Yep.
Washington didn't have the highest expectations for that season, not like they do this year. But like you say, it's just loud. And I remember, when the noise pumps in, it affects the offense the most, right? So that's when we're trying to
Yeah.
make calls, checks, trying to hear the snap count. When the ball's going to snap. If you got to maybe do something different as also lineman, maybe peek in at the ball to see when it's snapped because you just can't hear. It affects things tremendously. So that's something that I know how I say they practice with music all the time, but they're going to have to take it up to another level because it wasn't music. It wasn't like that a crowd, but like
Yeah.
you say, that sound set on top of you, and then like the stadium is like aluminum. It only sits 70,000. Obviously Ohio State we like 105, only sits 70,000, but it's just like a vibration in your ears,
Yeah.
and you can't hear anything. You can't hear the person right next to you if they're shouting. So that's definitely something that Julian saying and the offense is going to have to be ready for to figure out how they plan on communicating this week to make checks and things of that nature and just really operate cleanly if they're going to get this win on the road.
Yeah, this is a real test. It's one of those like SE SAT pretest type things where like you're gonna get a real test. You got a dynamic offense, a dynamic quarterback. You also on the flip side, like you mentioned, you have a young quarterback going into a hostile environment, having to deal with the crowd noise, which is going to be a factor in this type of game. You still have a new offensive coordinator who's new to being the offensive coordinator, right? So the collective of that operation is going to have to be able to they're going to have to be able to take what they've done at home and
Mhm.
travel with that on the road. Which if you get the win, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to continue to build and learn from that experience. And I mean, Washington is on is a school on the rise. They got some talent over there, so I expect a good matchup. Now, saying that, I think the key to this game at the end of the day is Ohio State's defense and their ability to minimize or eliminate explosive plays. If they can do that, then this game could be pretty lopsided. If you have a couple of explosives, they had one versus OU that went for a touchdown. If you have a couple of those, then it kind of really shifts and changes the dynamic of the entire game. So to me, that's the biggest thing to watch for is one on the offensive side. Is how does a young quarterback, new offensive coordinator really handle kind of that traveling with the offense on the road, the crowd noise and all that stuff in that type of environment. But on the flip side, how does the defense make sure that they eliminate and manage the explosive plays, and really, affect that quarterback who he has an opportunity to be pretty special if you give him that opportunity.
Yeah, and then offensively, like you got to be clean, right? We're going on the road. It's going to be loud. Like you say, we got a bunch of let's say young coaches, players, and some great positions here. But you have to be clean, right? I mean, something's going to happen. Washington's going to win some plays, right? And and
Yeah,
I know saying he already has a couple of interceptions on the season, but his completion percentage has been off the charts. So, if you have one, okay, bounce back, stay in the game, keep playing. Um, you don't want to have two or three type of situations where you just feel like things are kind of getting out of control when in terms of what you're seeing, first off, and then how you just kind of protecting the ball and things of that nature. So to me, it's like, this is a game that for your heart line, if it's me, you want to kind of go and you want to establish that run, right? Right now we're coming at you with three running backs, right? We got three guys that all seem to be lively. Obviously, a lot of people want more carries for the true freshman, Bo Jackson. But we still got a couple of older guys a little ahead of him, and I like that. I want to see those guys kind of get after it early. That's the best way to kind of take some of that noise that we're talking about and kind of pump it out the stadium, make the game a little bit boring by beating you up in the trenches. Where I feel like we definitely would have an advantage there and running the ball. So that's what I would like to see. Go out there, minimize the mistakes, run the ball, get that going early, to kind of take some of that energy out the stadium, and then you build a lead in that fashion, and then you lead them to try to play catch up where they are more more prone to probably making mistakes and things like that of that nature. So
Yeah, I feel good about that. I really want to get to a new topic, a topic
yeah,
that
man. Before we go, man, we got to shout out my guy, man. My guy Michael Brewster, assistant offensive line coach at Washington. He plays center next to me for basically 3 seasons. He's out there with the guys. He's a Husky this weekend. I shot him a
Yep.
DM saying congrats on the uppercut. Good luck this weekend. But you always know it's go Bucks. So the shout out to my guy Brewster, man.
Yeah, shout out to Brewster, a guy that I played against in high school down in the Orlando area, and then played with at Ohio State. Yeah, shout out to Bruce.
Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. We saw with Michigan,
Hey,
cyber crimes, stealing
sign
signals.
stealing. You want to protect your data, especially in the game of football, when you got certain teams that got a certain history of doing certain things that's, not always above the bar, I guess.
Yeah. And with data brokers, your name, your contact info, your social security number, your home address, even information about your family members, it's going to all be compiled by data brokers and sold online. So you got to protect your data.
Yeah, man. I think it's very important, man. I don't know how many I call them spam phone calls you get in a day, but I get way too many. So anything you can do to protect yourself from that and save your time and save your peace of mind, you got to go with it. And that's why we are endorsing Delete Me. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting PRO to 64,000. The only way to get 20% off is to text PRO to 64,000. That's PRO to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply.
But yeah, man, let's talk about it, man. Big Ten, man. So first off, what's up with Indiana? Man? I mean, like everyone was kind of saying this might be like a 1-year wonder with them, like 63-10 against Illinois. That was something special, right?
Yeah, it was special. And I want to start with this. This because the NIL era is here, right? Where basically you could pay athletes to play football. All right. So let's start there. Mark Cuban is a booster for Indiana. I don't know how much he's donating, but I suspect that him and a lot of others like him are beginning to really care about Indiana football and the opportunity that exists there. Now, let's move forward to what they've done on the football field. They got Coach Signetti, who showed last year. People wanted to discount what Indiana did last year. And, I mean, you can argue whether or not they played against, good teams all year, or when they did play against a ranked team, they lost, or whatever. The teams that they lost to, when you go through the list of teams that they lost to, you start off with Ohio State, who won the national championship. In the playoffs, they lost to Notre Dame, who played against Ohio State in the national championship, right? They lost to some pretty good teams. Now, let's push that aside. This coach took a ton of guys from James Madison. and was able to get a team that was projected to be last or somewhere near the bottom of the Big Ten into a college football playoff.
Mhm.
And the thing I credit him the most about doing that isn't just that he was able to do it. It was before he did it, he said, "Look me up. I win. Google me.
Google me. Google me.
Google." And everybody looks at that as he's arrogant. If you get hired to be the coach of the team that is projected to be last in the conference, and the coach says, "I win. Google me," and then he wins 10 games and he's in the college football playoff, that there has to be something else outside of arrogance. Like, we need to come up with another word that explains being able to say, "This is what I do," and then doing it, right?
Yeah.
And then this year comes into it, they get rid of some of the tougher out of conference games, right? He talks a little bit of trash, trying to get some more attention to IU. And in the first game in the Big Ten against a top 10 team in Illinois,
Top 10. Mhm.
what we tend to do is we strip credit away from a team that loses. Now,
Yeah.
there's something to it though, right? You can't lose by 50 points and be looked at favorably. Yes. But Illinois has proven that they've been a team on the rise as well. So I don't want to strip everything away from them because of one bad game. However, when I watch Indiana play, and we talked about this last season, when I watch Indiana play, they just play very good, smart football. And when I say that, this is why I think Coach Cignetti, to me, is a top 5 coach in college football. It's because I could watch the team play, and I see defensively the way these guys execute. I see offensively the way they execute. Like, there comes a point where a team like Indiana, they don't have a top 40. Like, they don't crack the top 40 when it comes to recruiting classes. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're getting guys in transfer portal. There's NIL money available to make that happen as well. So they're getting some players, but they got to scout those players as well. When I watch a team who's not getting all 5-star players, etc., when I watch a team like that play, I understand that against certain teams like Oregon, like Ohio State, the margin of error is much smaller than one of those teams that got all the top players. So you have to execute. And when I watch Indiana play, they just execute so well. So I got to give Coach Cignetti his flowers.
Yeah.
And I mean, this doesn't mean that they're going to win the Big Ten or nothing like that, but it shows. I mean, it does show that they are a top 10 team in college football, and they're going to be here to stay. I mean, beyond this year, but honestly, beyond this year.
Yeah, no, I think, what they're doing is that, and Coach, once again, smart. Coach Cignetti knows, hey, you made the playoff once. Before he signed his contract, he said, he kind of, in some interview, was kind of going over, like, they said they had this amount of money for me to operate with regarding NIL, to actually end up being a little bit more. And obviously, he gets to the playoffs, right? So they top of the top. And then he says, like, okay, this offseason, hey, I'm going to play an SEC schedule. I'm going to get all these big names from these other conferences. We're going to play the games that's in our conference that we have to play. We're going to win some of them. Maybe we lose one. But from there, we're trying to get back into these playoffs. And, they're having those conversations about automatic bidders, things of that nature. They want to be a team that can continue to stay in that conversation about being in the playoffs or being right there on the cusp of getting there, because he understands that's going to keep him operating. And he shows that, hey, if you give me this, I'll be successful. If you give me this amount of money to evaluate talent, to keep my staff together, I will win games. And that's what it comes down to. But everybody can't do it, right? We see, or you hear about programs, one-off and all these funds coming in, and we still haven't really seen the fruits of the labor when it comes to some of that stuff. But he's hitting right away. Like, hey, you pay me, you pay my guys, we're going to get it done. So once again, it's very impressive, and that he could take a team. Because I'll be honest, in my head, no one asked me, but in my head before the game, I was like, well, Illinois should be more physical. They got, in my opinion, a little bit more experience at quarterback, because obviously their quarterback returned, to play at Illinois when Indiana has Mendoza, who's after this game, he's up in the Heisman conversation. But before, having a good season, right? He hadn't played with it against anyone. But now he's in that conversation. But in my opinion, Illinois would be more physical. They can run the ball better. They have more experience at quarterback. I was picking Illinois to go on the road to figure that out. And, and it didn't take long to realize, like, man, Illinois is
It's not gonna
overwhelmed.
happen.
Like these guys are clicking it on all levels, and they're taking it to these guys, and it became like a no watch pretty quickly because Indiana was just they was taking it to them. So it's something to say to that, right? And you've been in your program, and obviously I don't know who else Indiana has on the schedule throughout the season, but they check one box. We had a top 10 program come into our stadium, we beat them by 50. So so if they go on and maybe they lose another one, they lose one rather, they lose it close. There's not going to be much of an argument to keep them out of the playoffs when you start talking about maybe some SEC teams with 3 losses. Like, no, Indiana gets in, no question, right? And so, hats off to them. Obviously someone in the conference has to step up, in certain situations. And it looks like Indiana they're prone to do it.
Yeah, they're the team to do it. And when you watch them play, especially in this game versus Illinois, it was very clear that Indiana's defensive line was just too much for Illinois' offensive line. It was just too much, right?
Mhm.
Like Altmaier had no ability to do anything. I don't even know I couldn't imagine what he was seeing out there. What happens though is when they play a Penn State or they play a Oregon or they play Ohio State, it's not going to be the same, right? And you would expect that those offensive lines will be able to at least, equal the defensive line for Indiana, which means, what do they have in the defensive backfield, safety, corner, et cetera. And that's what Ohio State, they overmatched them because they had too much talent at the receiver position for Indiana to play that loose zone, right? Everybody seemed like they was open for Ohio State. So that's to be determined. But still, I mean, we watch these guys execute a game plan, man. They do it as good as any college football team that I've seen.
Yeah.
So shout out to them. They're definitely here to stay. It's gonna be interesting to see how things kind of end up when they go against a Penn State, when they go against an Oregon. I mean, when they end up let's say they lose both of those games, where do they still stack up in terms of a college football playoff at the end of the day? I think they're still right there. They're still competing for it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so but other big game in the Big Ten this weekend was Michigan traveled to Nebraska. And Michigan was able to squeak that one out. They were able to get the road win there, 30-27. Obviously the quarterback Bryce Underwood had a pretty good game. He had some rushing plays and throwing plays, seemed to be pretty good player. But I don't know, to me the more conversation is around Matt Rhule in Nebraska, right? This is kind of, they got a little bit of experience now when it comes to the quarterback and Dylan Raiola and, and him just running this program. I think this was year 3 of him being in that program. And it still doesn't, a loss like this kind of makes you, a below average, right? I don't know if he got some time to play himself back, but right now he doesn't appear to be one of those emerging teams in the Big Ten and college football, after a loss like that.
Yeah, I'm out on the Matt Rhule Nebraska, right? I always said year 3 Nebraska would be their year. And I thought this was the year they took the next step. For them to take the next step, they have to win against a Michigan. Like everybody can't be at the top. So you got to start beating the teams that aren't there. And Michigan with a young quarterback, a guy who's still kind of figuring out his way. The coaches, between him and the coaches, they're still kind of figuring out what's the best way for this offense to operate. They'll be a better team in 3 weeks than they were versus Nebraska. So Nebraska with the veteran quarterback, it just seemed like, he did a good job completing passes. I think Raiola does a pretty good job with his accuracy. But it just seemed like the pocket presence wasn't there. I don't know. They should have been able to win a close game. Nebraska in the last few years has consistently lost close games. Consistently over and
That's
over
even
again.
back to Frost, right?
Right. So you expect at some point when they figure it out, they now win these types of games. And it seems like they're still in the same spot. So, yeah, I'm kind of surprised, and not necessarily surprised that they lost to Michigan. They never really beat them, but I'm kind of surprised that they haven't been able to take that next step here. Year 3 of Matt Rhule's coaching tenure at Nebraska.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see how that kind of plays out. But yeah, this upcoming weekend, obviously, our Buckeyes are traveling to Washington to kick off their Big Ten season. Other big games in the Big Ten is USC is playing Illinois, so both of those teams are still ranked, so it'll be a good game there. Also, USC is one of the other teams that's trying to get back to be in that conversation of being one of the top teams for the first time for them in the Big Ten, but one of the top teams in the nation. But also, Oregon travels to Penn State, which would be, obviously all eyes on that matchup. Whoever win that game is, they probably go right back to, number 2 in the nation, whoever takes that one. I haven't watched Oregon really much this season, but you see the scores. They've been winning pretty lopsided.
Right.
Penn State also been winning, but it seems like not as clean as Oregon has been winning. I don't know. What's your quick thoughts on that game, that matchup, and what it means for the conference?
This game is only about Penn State to me. It's literally only about Penn State. Oregon can afford to lose this game and get ready for a playoff run as long as they continue to take care of business throughout the season. They still got some other big games to play. Penn State is a team that consistently loses games that they are either evenly matched or underdogs. And for their psyche and for Coach Franklin's, confidence in the team's confidence that they can get this done, to me, this is a game for Penn State. I think for Oregon, you go out here and play. If you lose, it's whatever. You continue to build. Oregon was able to win a big game versus Ohio State early, and they got blown out by Ohio State in the playoffs. This isn't, to me, that big of a deal. I do think Oregon is a very, very good team. I think Dante Moore, who was the guy who played for Chip Kelly his freshman year and started some games, transferred to Oregon Saturday year. I think he looks good. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks against a Penn State level defense, a Jim Knowles defense.
And Jim Knowles defense.
Be ready to play. Yeah, they're going to be ready to play. Jim Knowles, he had his experience struggling versus Oregon. He had his experience holding Oregon to very little. So it's going to be a good test for them. But I think Oregon is more so in learning mode still as they build with a quarterback who's, just getting back into it, et cetera. Penn State needs to show that they are who everybody thinks they are. And I don't believe that. I don't believe it. So, we'll see.
Nah, but yeah, that's it for us this week. Obviously, Ohio State, we're coming off a bye week, so we're expecting fresh legs as they travel out west to take on the Huskies. Obviously, it should be a good one to watch, and we'll tune in. I think we're at the 3:30 window Eastern Standard Time here, so it'll be a good one to catch up on. But yeah, that's our show. As the week goes on, if anything happens, we'll jump on. We'll share Ohio State news. Please follow us on our platforms, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We'll be there bringing the latest and the greatest in our opinions on our 25 Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to end the show as always with a nice OH.
Ayo.
Go Bucks. Talk to you guys soon.
Go Bucks.